The emergency beacon pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to mock the incoming destruction. Captain Area Chen stood motionless, her reflection ghosting against the reinforced graphene viewport of Outpost Prometheus. Outside, the alien warships of the Zarnkov Collective descended like metallic vultures, their obsidian hulls blocking out the twin suns of the Proxima system. 32 minutes until direct contact, announced Araya, the station's quantum AI assistant, the ironic naming, Autonomous Responsive Intelligence Algorithm, had been Elena's idea, a private joke between her and Area that now felt like a lifetime ago. Aria's fingers traced the holographic interface, pulling up the final evacuation reports. 412 colonists, scientists, engineers, their families, had been safely transported through the quantum tunnel network just hours before. What remained was nothing more than an elaborate trap, meticulously designed by the most brilliant mind Area had ever known. Dr. Elena Rodriguez wasn't just her wife. She was humanity's most dangerous weapon. The station's core hummed with a frequency that human ears couldn't detect, but would drive alien sensors into complete chaos. Elena's last message played again in Aria's neural implant, her voice calm and clinical. They won't understand us until they understand the true meaning of adaptation. This isn't about destruction. This is about sending a message that will echo through every star system. Zarnkov intelligence reports, intercepted and decoded weeks earlier, had revealed their true intentions. What appeared to be a peacekeeping mission was actually a systematic plan to neutralize human expansion. They viewed humanity as an unpredictable variable, a species too volatile to be allowed unrestricted growth. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first wave of Zarnkov ships entered the station's immediate orbital range, their weapon signatures charged, massive plasma cannons that could reduce entire planetary surfaces to molten glass. Standard protocol would dictate surrender or feudal resistance. Area Chen was not interested in standard protocol. Her hand hovered over the final activation sequence. The quantum cascade generator at the station's core was unlike anything in known galactic technology. Developed through years of research that blended quantum mechanics, biological adaptation principles, and a fundamental understanding of technological systems that most species couldn't even conceptualize. Final systems check. Aria's voice was almost human in its anticipation. Confirmed. Aria responded. The Zarnkov commander, a massive crystalline being named Karkstal, was broadcasting what he assumed was a standard subjugation message. Aria could see the translation scrolling across her neural feed. Terran vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Concordance Statute 7 Epsilon. Surrender is your only rational option. A slight smile crossed Aria's lips. Rational. As if rationality was a universal constant. Her finger pressed the activation sequence. What happened next would be discussed, analyzed, and feared across multiple star systems for generations. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was a systemic unraveling so precise, so comprehensive, that it defied every known principle of technological warfare. The quantum cascade generator didn't just disable the Zarnkov ships. It fundamentally deconstructed their technological infrastructure at a quantum level. Navigation systems became nonsensical mathematical paradoxes. Communication networks transformed into white noise that carried encrypted messages no alien technology could decode. 47 seconds. That's how long it took for an entire advanced alien battle fleet to become nothing more than floating debris and quantum-entangled confusion. Area Chen watched, her reflection still perfect against the viewport. The first message had been sent. Humanity was done playing nice. The coffee was bitter, synthetic, a perfect match for Jack Emerson's mood. Screens surrounded him in the underground facility, each displaying a fractal landscape of global and interstellar data streams. His fingers moved with a surgeon's precision, dancing across holographic interfaces that most intelligence agencies would kill to understand. The Hydra Protocol wasn't just a system. It was a revolution disguised as an algorithm. 12 hours after the Proxima incident, The first whispers of global destabilization began. It started small, almost imperceptible. A banking system in the Orion Arm experiencing micro-fluctuations. A communication network in the Centauri cluster developing inexplicable lag times. Isolated incidents that meant nothing individually, but would become everything when woven together. Jack's team was small, just 7 individuals who understood that modern warfare was won in lines of code, not lines of battle formations. Dr. Aishan Kosi, a quantum cryptography expert, sat to his left. Her dark eyes reflected multiple data streams, catching nuances that would escape even the most advanced AI. Initiating Phase 2, she muttered, her fingers triggering a cascade of algorithmic dominoes. The Galactic Concordants had spent millennia believing they could control information. They were about to learn the most dangerous lesson of their existence. Information wasn't just power. In human hands, it was a weapon of total systemic destruction. Each breach was meticulously crafted, not to destroy, but to expose. Financial transaction histories were rewritten with surgical precision. Critical infrastructure systems developed blind spots that would take months, perhaps years, to fully comprehend. Communication networks began generating white noise that contained layers of encrypted messages, each more complex than the last. Jack remembered the briefing 6 months ago. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had laid out the core principle with chilling simplicity. We don't fight their system. We make their system fight itself. The Krelltak Communication Hub was the first major target. Their vast network, considered the most secure in the known galaxy, began experiencing quantum entanglement anomalies. Messages arrived before they were sent. Encryption keys became living, shifting entities that transformed faster than they could be tracked. Substrate infiltration at 67%, Aisha announced, her voice clinical. What made the Hydra Protocol truly terrifying wasn't its destructive potential. It was its adaptive intelligence. Each interaction, each system breach, made the protocol smarter. It learned. It evolved. The more the alien systems tried to resist, the more thoroughly they were dismantled. By the 3rd day, entire governmental infrastructures were experiencing systemic failures that defied logical explanation. Military communication channels developed spontaneous feedback loops. Economic trading algorithms began generating transactions that existed in theoretical quantum states, simultaneously completed and never initiated. The truly brilliant aspect was its invisibility. To most observers, nothing seemed wrong. Only those deep within critical infrastructure would slowly realize that something fundamental had changed. Jack allowed himself a rare smile. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were rewriting the entire concept of conflict. Full-spectrum engagement confirmed, Araya. The same AI system that had guided the Proxima operation, announced through his neural link. The invisible war had begun, and humanity had just changed the rules of engagement forever. The Prometheus Institute looked like nothing special from the outside. A minimalist building of carbon composite and living glass, nestled in the mountains of New Zealand. But inside, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was about to change everything humanity understood about intelligence. Her latest creation sat in the central laboratory, a quantum computational matrix that defied every established principle of artificial intelligence. Unlike traditional AI systems that learn through programmed algorithms, this system was different. It was alive. Initialize primary diagnostic sequence, Elena commanded, her voice steady. The room hummed with potential. Dr. Marcus Way, her primary research partner, watched the holographic displays with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They had spent 6 years developing Prometheus, the probabilistic recursive optimization matrix for emergent heuristic intelligence specialized systems. What made Prometheus unique wasn't just its processing power. It was its fundamental architecture, modeled after the human immune system's ability to adapt, learn, and respond to unprecedented threats. The first test began simply enough. A complex quantum entanglement problem that had stumped the Galactic Scientific Consortium for decades appeared on the primary display. Previous AI systems would have taken months, if not years, to even begin approaching a solution. Prometheus solved it in 37 seconds. But solving the problem wasn't what made the system revolutionary. It was how it solved it. The AI didn't just calculate. It explored multiple dimensional approaches simultaneously, creating solution pathways that were simultaneously theoretical and practical. Biological adaptation protocols engaged, the system announced. Its voice was neither male nor female, a deliberate choice that reflected its fundamental nature. Marcus leaned closer to Elena. The quantum recursion is showing patterns we've never seen before. It's not just solving the problem. It's reimagining the entire conceptual framework. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected intersection of disciplines. Elena had combined principles from immunology, quantum mechanics, and distributed neural networks. Most scientific teams would have considered such an approach impossible. Humans specialized in impossible. Prometheus began generating technological solutions at a rate that defied comprehension. A problem in quantum communication became a complete redesign of interstellar communication protocols. A theoretical challenge in material science transformed into a new approach to molecular engineering. The system is generating intellectual offspring, Marcus whispered, half in awe, half in terror. Each solution wasn't just an answer. It was a complete reimagining of the problem itself. Traditional AI learned from existing data. Prometheus created entirely new paradigms of understanding. The Galactic Scientific Consortium would receive a report in exactly 72 hours, a report that would make it clear that humanity had just changed the fundamental understanding of intelligence itself. Elena watched the system work, a slight smile crossing her face. They weren't just developing a new technology. They were giving birth to a new form of intelligence, one that understood adaptation as its fundamental principle. "We're going to change everything," she murmured. Prometheus responded, its voice carrying a hint of something almost like anticipation. "We already have." Commander Malik Rodriguez Singh stood perfectly still, watching the holographic display of the Krelltak invasion plan. Every minute detail was laid bare, not through traditional intelligence gathering, but through a psychological warfare strategy that would redefine conflict itself. The Krelltak believed their invasion was a secret. They were catastrophically wrong. Their entire operational plan existed in a quantum-encrypted database that the humans had not just accessed, but thoroughly dissected. More importantly, they had understood the fundamental psychology behind the invasion. The Krelltak weren't just a military force. They were a complex social organism, driven by deeply ingrained cultural fears and hierarchical imperatives. Their invasion of human territories wasn't about territory. It was about maintaining a galactic power structure that had existed for millennia. Malik's team had spent months preparing a response that would do more than prevent the invasion. They would utterly dismantle the Krelltak's entire societal construct. "Initiating psychological cascade," announced Dr. Reena Patel, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that looked more like an artist's palette than a military control system. The first wave wasn't a military strike. It was information. Every high-ranking Krelltak officer's most private communications were simultaneously broadcast across multiple communication networks. Personal messages, hidden fears, secret doubts, everything became public. The invasion plans were almost secondary to the personal revelations. Admiral Kirk's secret correspondence revealed a lifetime of self-doubt. His invasion plan was less a military strategy and more a desperate attempt to prove his own worth to a rigid social hierarchy that had marginalized him for decades. Personal messages to his mate showed a being terrified of failure, of being seen as weak. General Vexner's communication logs exposed a complex web of political manipulations, blackmail, secret alliances, personal vulnerabilities, all laid bare in excruciating detail. But it wasn't just exposure. It was strategic deconstruction. Each revelation was carefully curated to maximize psychological impact. The humans didn't just reveal secrets. They provided context that would tear apart the Krelltak's entire social fabric. Cultural nuances were weaponized with surgical precision. The invasion plans began to disintegrate before they could even begin. Military units started receiving conflicting orders. Communication channels became battlegrounds of internal suspicion. The carefully constructed hierarchy of the Krell-Tak military began to consume itself from within. Psychological entropy at 73%, Dr. Patil announced, her voice clinical. Malik watched the cascading effect. This wasn't just preventing an invasion. This was a fundamental reimagining of conflict resolution. They weren't destroying an enemy. They were revealing the enemy to itself. By the time the Krell-Tak realized what had happened, their invasion force had become a collection of isolated, paranoid individuals, more concerned with internal survival than external conquest. No shots were fired. No traditional weapons were deployed. Humanity had just fought an entire war through understanding, a weapon far more powerful than any physical technology. Mission accomplished, Malik said quietly. The galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Concordance chamber fell silent when Professor Dr. Zara Amani took the podium. She wasn't a military leader. She wasn't a politician. She was something far more dangerous. A systems architect who understood that true power resided in the spaces between existing structures. The economic sanctions against human expansion were supposed to be a death blow. They would become the instrument of the Concordance's own destruction. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary representatives of the galactic community, Zara began, her voice carrying the calm precision of someone about to perform surgery. We are here to discuss economic stability. Behind her, a holographic display began to unfold, a living, breathing map of economic interactions that pulsed with an almost organic complexity. Each line represented a trade route, each node a potential point of economic exchange. What the other species saw as a static diagram, Zara saw as a dynamic ecosystem waiting to be reimagined. The Concordance's sanctions were elegantly constructed, decades of careful legal framework designed to strangle any species attempting to expand beyond its prescribed territories. They had worked perfectly, until humanity arrived. Where other species would have fought the sanctions directly, humans did something entirely unexpected. They began to redesign the entire economic framework. New trade routes emerged that didn't just bypass the existing system. They fundamentally transformed it. A quantum communication network developed by Dr. Elena Rodriguez's team allowed for instantaneous, secure economic exchanges that made traditional banking look like an abacus competing with a quantum computer. Cryptocurrency evolved from a financial tool to a form of diplomatic language. Each transaction became a complex negotiation, each exchange a potential diplomatic channel. We're not breaking your rules, Zora explained, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. We're expanding the definition of what rules can be. Small colonies became economic powerhouses overnight. Species that had been marginalized for centuries found themselves with unprecedented access to resources and communication networks. The human-developed systems didn't just create economic opportunities, they created entire new forms of collaborative existence. The Concordance's legal teams worked frantically, trying to find loopholes, trying to understand how humanity was systematically dismantling millennia of established economic control. By the time they would understand one strategy, 3 more would have already been implemented. It wasn't about defeating the system, it was about rendering the system obsolete. Trade routes that had existed for thousands of years suddenly found more efficient alternatives. Communication networks became living, adaptive entities that could reroute and reconfigure faster than any regulatory body could track. Dr. Imani's final slide showed something that made the Concordance representatives go silent. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. A new economic model that didn't just include every known species, it allowed for unprecedented levels of collaborative development. We're not here to conquer, Zara said softly. We're here to show you what's possible when you stop thinking about control and start thinking about potential. The room remained silent, but the seeds of a new galactic order had just been planted. Humanity had weaponized possibility itself. The diplomatic summit was never meant to be anything more than a formality. Representatives from 63 galactic species gathered in the massive orbital station Concordance Prime, each believing they understood the game of interstellar politics. Dr. Elena Rodriguez knew better. Her presentation wasn't just a speech. It was a surgical deconstruction of everything the Galactic Concordance believed about power, governance, and species interaction. The holographic display behind her began to pulse with living data, not static charts, but dynamic representations of systemic interactions that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. Each graph, each projection, told a story that would rewrite galactic understanding. For millennia, Elena began, her voice calm and precise. Your systems have been built on a fundamental misunderstanding of collective potential. The first wave of her presentation dismantled the Concordance's economic models. She didn't argue. She demonstrated. Living data showed how current governance structures actively prevented technological and social development for entire species. Economic barriers that had existed for thousands of years were revealed as nothing more than artificially maintained control mechanisms. Ambassador Kirkstall of the Zarnkov Collective shifted uncomfortably. The holographic data was pulling apart his species' entire philosophical understanding of interstellar relations. But Elena was just getting started. The next phase of her presentation dove into technological development. She showed how the current galactic research infrastructure actively suppressed innovation. Species were categorized, limited, their potential predetermined by archaic classification systems. You don't develop potential, she explained. You manage limitation. Each slide was a weapon, not of destruction, but of revelation. Technological exchange networks that had been considered impossible were shown to be not just feasible, but necessary. Communication protocols that had been locked in place for centuries were revealed as fundamentally broken. The quantum communication network developed by human researchers wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a complete reimagining of information exchange. Representatives from marginalized species began to lean forward. This wasn't a political argument. This was a complete systemic analysis that gave voice to decades of suppressed potential. We're not here to replace your system, Elena continued. We're here to show you that your system is preventing its own evolution. The final phase of her presentation was the most devastating. She demonstrated how the Concordance's governance model actively created the very conflicts it claimed to prevent. Economic restrictions, technological limitations, communication barriers. Each was revealed as a self-perpetuating mechanism of control. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Not the silence of defeat, the silence of a fundamental understanding being rewritten. Ambassador Kirkstall was the first to speak. You've shown us not just our failures, he said, but our potential. Dr. Rodriguez allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Humanity hadn't come to conquer. They had come to transform. The galactic order was about to change forever, and they were just getting started. The research station orbiting Kepler 452 bits was unlike any collaborative project in galactic history. Humans worked alongside representatives from 12 different species, each bringing technological and cultural perspectives that would have been unimaginable just years before. Commander Malik Rodriguez Singh watched through the observation deck, his neural implant parsing multiple communication streams simultaneously. This wasn't just a research facility. It was a living experiment in reimagining interspecies cooperation. Dr. Aishan Kosi, quantum physicist, lead researcher, and architect of the station's collaborative framework, approached with her characteristic precision. A holographic display flickered to life between them, showing the intricate web of research projects currently in progress. We're not just solving problems, Aisha explained, her fingers tracing quantum communication pathways. We're creating an entirely new approach to collective intelligence. The station represented humanity's most radical diplomatic strategy. Where previous galactic interactions had been defined by hierarchy and control, this facility was built on a fundamental principle of mutual potential. A Kreltak researcher worked alongside a Zarnkov engineer, analyzing quantum entanglement principles that would have been considered impossible just months earlier. Their communication wasn't just translation. It was a genuine exchange of perspectives. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Prometheus, the adaptive AI system developed by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, had created a communication protocol that went beyond traditional language. It was a dynamic, living translation system that captured not just words, but cultural nuance, emotional context, and collective understanding. "Look," Malik said, pointing to a specific research module. A team comprising humans, Zarnkov, and a species known as the Lyrax were developing a completely new approach to faster-than-light communication. It wasn't just a technological project. It was a reimagining of how species could interact at a fundamental level. The most radical aspect wasn't the technology. It was the underlying philosophy. Each research team was structured to maximize diverse perspectives. Hierarchies were fluid. Leadership rotated based on expertise, not species or rank. A junior researcher from a previously marginalized species could lead a project if their insights were the most valuable. Dr. Rodriguez's famous quote hung in the station's central hub: "We're not here to rule. We're here to ensure no one rules through fear again." It wasn't just a statement. It was a fundamental approach to galactic interaction. The station's most significant project wasn't technological. It was sociological. They were developing a new framework of interspecies cooperation that didn't rely on domination or control. Malik watched as a young human researcher collaborated with a Lyrax scientist, their communication flowing seamlessly through the adaptive translation system. Their body language, so different, yet so similar, spoke of a genuine exchange of ideas. "We're creating something new," Aisha murmured. The research station was more than a scientific facility. It was a prototype for a new galactic order. Humanity hadn't conquered. They had invited everyone to reimagine what was possible. And the galaxy was beginning to listen. The colony ship Horizon hung in space like a promise. Gleaming, complex, a living testament to what humanity had become. It wasn't just a vessel of exploration. It was a moving embassy of possibility. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, watching the quantum navigation systems plot a course through uncharted space. Beside her, a mixed crew of human and alien researchers worked with a fluidity that would have been impossible just years earlier. "Preparing quantum jump," announced Araya, the ship's adaptive intelligence system, coordinating with multi-species navigation protocols. This wasn't just a journey. It was a statement. The horizon represented the culmination of everything humanity had fought for, not through violence, but through a radical reimagining of potential. Each section of the ship told a story of collaborative development. Technologies developed by 12 different species worked in perfect harmony, creating something greater than any could have achieved alone. In the communications hub, a Zarnkov communication specialist worked alongside a human quantum engineer. Their work was more than technical. It was a living dialogue of perspectives, of possibilities. Elena remembered the early days, the conflicts, the misunderstandings, the moments when humanity could have chosen destruction and instead chose something far more powerful: understanding. The ship's mission was unprecedented. They weren't conquering. They were connecting. Exploring regions of space that had been considered impossible to navigate, bringing together technologies and perspectives that had never before been combined. A young researcher, half human, half Lyrax, approached Elena. Her name was Aria Chen Rodriguez, named after the first human who had triggered the quantum cascade that changed everything. "We're receiving quantum communication from the forward research stations," she reported. Her voice carried the calm confidence of a generation that had grown up believing in collaborative potential. The holographic displays came alive. Data streams from multiple species merged into a complex, living network of information. Each piece of data was more than just information. It was a conversation, a connection, a possibility. Prometheus, the adaptive intelligence that had been humanity's first true breakthrough, analyzed the incoming data. But it was more than an analysis. It was a conversation, a collaborative process of understanding. Potential breakthrough detected in quantum communication protocols, Araya announced. The ship's intelligence was no longer just a tool. It was a partner, a collaborative entity that worked alongside its biological counterparts. Alina watched the displays, seeing not just data, but the living proof of everything they had fought for. The galaxy was no longer a place of conflict, but a network of potential. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together, developed together, explored together. "We're approaching the quantum transition point," Araya reported. The ship itself seemed to hold its breath. This was more than a journey through space. It was a journey through possibility. Alina remembered the words she had spoken during the pivotal diplomatic summit years ago. "We're not here to replace your system. We're here to show you that your system is preventing its own evolution." The horizon jumped. Space folded around them, not conquered, but understood. Humanity had changed everything. And they were just getting started.